I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. It is a gorgeous day here in New York City. Andrew Kuo, how are you feeling in the trenches of the bi-coastal vibe war?
Well, me feeling this gorgeous weather in Rochester right now. Kind of alarmed at people bringing up this Rochester versus LA debate constantly.
It gets tiring.
Yeah.
I mean, look, there's room for two great American cities on opposite sides of our sprawling land. You know, we have on one side, of course, Los Angeles, where there's healthy drinks and legal marijuana and
Cars, sweatpants,
all of
correct
that.
body mass indexes.
And then over here we have like the epitome of the American city. Thomas Bryant, garbage plates, RX Nephew and RX Pappy, Wegmans. I get it. I get why there's this natural rivalry between Rochester and LA, but like I feel like it can be a peaceful coexistence.
And jealousy. Jealous ones envy, man.
JOE.
You know, they're working on their tans. They're working on their fits, their bodies at the beach. Meanwhile, in Rochester, those hot dog legs just come naturally, man. No maintenance involved.
We're up there on Lake Ontario with a pair of Zweigel's White Hots extended into the small swath of sand.
I was on Twitter and I was thinking about this LA versus New York rivalry thing. And I was like, I am so tired of people arguing stuff about like Tupac versus Biggie, about like Death Row versus Bad Boy. It just feels so ancient to me, like a guitar solo. I'm just like, dudes. But then when someone's just like, New York is weak, I'm like, well, I can't just let that slide. I gotta talk about this now.
Andrew Kuo will not be caught lacking.
No. Yeah, when someone's like, New York is mid, I'm like, well, compared to what? My true Napoleon complex comes out.
I like that there was a little viral thing going around of Biggie and Tupac freestyling together. And, you know, this is something that we've been aware of forever. And it's like, you know, the new generation seeing this clip. And it's like, wow, these two legends in the same room. And everyone was kind of like responding to it being like, nice, you know,
yeah.
iconic. And someone I was following just was like, yo, Tupac was so trash. I was like, and I went and watched the clip. I'm like, yeah, his freestyle was fucking garbage. Like absolutely terrible. But no one in the comments was like, this was bad. They're like, yo, legends. You listen, you're like, no, Tupac was like terrible. Absolutely awful verse. His freestyling was garbage. I'm like, maybe I'm just missing the point here, but whoever called The Emperor Had No Clothes was correct. Like, just a very weak freestyle verse from Tupac.
If we're for a minute, just for 1 minute on this perfect pod, allowed to disrespect the dead, I would say Tupac.
Look, I know your agenda. More disrespect for the dead. Please disrespect the dead.
I think Tupac being kind of lackluster is not a surprise. My idea, if we're allowed to disrespect the dead for a second, is that Biggie Smalls was kind of overrated. Great rapper. Huge fan. But like many wonderful artists have come out after him. I mean, I would even put Outkast up there with him, but that conversation is hard to have when someone has passed through this mortal coil and no longer can defend themselves in a physical.
Well, then allow me
Go
to
off.
defend the notorious B.I.G.
Fat Kings stick together. Let's go.
No, I think he was great, and I'm not even doing that from like some East Coast puritanical shit.
He's awesome.
And my thing was that, and I made this point back then too. These are like 25-year-old arguments. Is that
yes? Well, I can't believe
is that I think he was someone who was evolving with rap music at the time, and the way that he was embracing like Midwestern rap and West Coast rap, and I think he would have adapted to the changing climate of like regionalism in a way that would have been pretty seamless. And I think he would have been criticized by purists, especially even myself. Like, oh my, why is he doing these songs with like, Master P? Because clearly, maybe because of Puff's business instincts and so forth, but Biggie was clearly someone who had the ability to switch up his cadence and hit all these different markers regionally. And I don't think there's any way that Puff would have allowed him to stay in like this distinctly Nazian East Coast lane, because he was really trying to push regionalism early on. So my point here is I think he was really talented, but also I think he would have done the same stuff that Jay-Z did in terms of, rapping with like UGK or rapping with Juvenile. And I think Biggie would have maintained his presence because of his talent and sort of his the business acumen for a while.
And he is a body positive king. I didn't mean to call him the F word, but like anybody. But I would say if one would revisit Life After Death, I think your point would be a bit shakier. I agree with you, but he had already been changing towards like very radio friendly kind of R&B, and I like his Faith Evans collab and all that. But don't overestimate Puff and say he's adaptable, because he seems anything but adaptable. He seems very smart and rich. That's two different things. But I don't think he would have embraced like the things we say he would. But we'll never know. We'll never know, and that doesn't matter. What we do know is you cannot get a table to eat in New York City at 7 p.m. And for people visiting from LA, that is a travesty, but not in the way people are coming after him for.
Well, before we move on from Biggie, as you said, Vibe War, he was the casualty. Suge versus Puff, literally murdered in LA, the king of New York.
Unsolved.
Everyone like knows who did it too. Like everyone knows. It's not even a mystery. Like everyone knows who did it. But my last point about Biggie, and then we move on, is that I actually think he was at his best rapping though right before he died. Like those songs like on Life After Death, even ones that weren't like great like hits, I think he was probably like, I forget even the names of some of those songs. They weren't singles. They were like, what's the one named after the movie that had like Charlie Baltimore as a character in it? They just really loved that movie for some reason. I don't know. But anyway, I think he was at his peak as a rapper, like in terms of his did you say The Menu? Long Kiss Goodnight. Yeah. Okay. Like to me those were kind of like his best rapping in terms of like multi-syllabic stuff and weird flows and cadences. So again, I think we only saw the beginnings of him before his life was cut short in the East Coast, West Coast, Rochester, LA vibe war.
Well, we get to see the direct lineage of Biggie in plain sight with Hakeem Jeffries accepting his role as the leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives. That rap was fire. No, it was crazy. The Democrats should relinquish all power in the three branches of government after that travesty.
So you're, of course, talking about this New York Times op-ed, or excuse me, it was a style section piece. And the premise was that New York City is becoming just like LA. And the examples were legal marijuana as opposed to trees in Tompkins Square Park. Jelena, the Venice restaurant that is opening up, vegetable first pizza place. And also themes of wellness, solitude. And there's quotes from friends of the pod, Sue Chan and Chris Black in that. The key point, key line, New York is giving LA.
Which is like
a weird... Do you stand by that, Andrew?
Which is an odd self-own. Like I'm wondering who is getting owned here. It's just like maybe New York is like biting LA, but that's never gonna work because New York City is New York. You know how I feel about LA. Barely not even a top 5 city in America. But is New York giving LA? Maybe in little ways.
I mean, to me, no. But also, look, look. Let me tell you guys, this is how the style section sausage gets made. You come up with a flimsy premise, and you report it out. You know, you're like, hey, I got this idea. We got a couple things that have opened up. We got some.
Put it in pod form, cowards.
We got some LA-ish trends going on here. Some businesses from LA are opening up. We got the weed. All right. I can buy that as a trend, and then so you write it in this kind of this house voice, which is like with a wink, but you report it out. Like, all right, we're gonna get quotes to back this up. We're gonna talk to people. We're gonna get people saying, oh yeah, that's true. That is happening. That's a trend. But you write it with a wink that it's like, don't take this too seriously. This is a fake trend, but we're going to say it's a trend. And that way people get fired up about it. People talk about it. But then you can like, yeah, but it's just a style story, man. We're just riffing. So I understand how this is done. And it's kind of a fun format until a married straight man says New York is giving LA.
Communists have overrun Canal Street. Yeah. I mean, Karen Monaco, also from the New York Times, had this great joke about Harry Styles. He was like, I don't really love his music. They don't call him Harry Music. And I'm like, right. They don't call this the news section. They don't call this the perfect pod section. They call it the style section. So it's like, it's fast and loose. And to be fair to the style section, it serves its purpose, right? Like, these are some hilarious articles.
Yeah. I'm not even knocking it. It was just the line, New York is giving LA.
Oh, bait.
Grinding my gears.
And always the same group of people discussing these topics, which I love. It's kind of like we talk about songbirds, but it's just like a group of like 40 people talking to each other. I love it. And
I'm trying to think if I ever wrote a fake trend piece. That wasn't really my beat.
Did you ever push like ideas? We both, full disclosure, we both work for the paper of record. But like, have you ever pushed an idea that you weren't 100 on, but it was funny to you?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. I mean, I would say. I mean, I remember writing a story a long time ago about like French nightlife in New York. But that was also, it was right. So like
LeBron and stuff.
Right, like and LeBron, you know, three, and it was like the like Simonez and you know people
Christmas
from
restaurants.
Yeah, it was all part of that. But also, you know, the rule of thumb here is like 3 make a trend. So if there's like, okay, there's 3 parties at Chinatown restaurants, we got a trend piece. Like I mean, that's just how it works. If there's 3, you can write about it. So like, some of these, of course, are fragile in that way. But by definition, it's like, look, 3 of these exist. It's a trend. We can write about it. So, you know, like this article about New York giving LA, he had enough examples to fit the criteria for this story. So, like, that's kind of what I mean. It's like you can write this in the house voice. You can say it with a wink. You've got some examples to, like, quote, unquote, prove it. But ultimately, like, hey, man, it's just a trend. Am I saying that New York is like LA? No, but it's giving LA.
And it doesn't, like, the knee-jerk reaction or responses of, like, well, LA gives New York. Like, look at all these New York things that arrive on the West Coast shores. And it's like, well, we're not doing that. We're trying to make New Yorkers angry because LA people, this is my awful take, is LA people don't care as much as New York people about this stuff. If a New York writer wrote like, LA is straight up biting New York City style, I think most LA people would be like, yeah, fair enough. New York is pretty cool.
You guys are just going around wearing Uncle Paulie's hats. Like, do you know Paulie? Like, we do.
If you're such a Paulie fan, name me 5 of the best Paulies.
He's from Queens. I remember seeing him around all the time.
Yeah. He would just sit on the stoop with his bench and listen to Biggie Smalls. Paulie. But yeah, I mean, fair enough. The examples that caught people's feelings were from our friend Chris Black, and he said it's like, well, when I visit and I go to certain restaurants, certain hot restaurants, I can't get a table at 7 p.m. for two, which is a travesty. And people took that bait, right, a little bit, being like, well, of course, it's the busiest time on a weekend. Like, of course, you're not going to get a seat. But he was leaving bait for people who misinterpreted his joke, which is like, if you were cool, why are you chilling at Del Boca Vista? 7 p.m. is very early.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought I think Resi was quoted in there, or someone from Resi, and was giving some stats. And they went and gave us the math, and they said 2% of people are eating earlier than they were a few years ago. And
wow.
That may not sound like a lot, but it's, over the years, that's millions of reservations or whatever. Right. We'll see. Okay, sure. And now, what time period are you using for this this statistical breakdown? I'm like, well, 2019 until now. I'm like, huh. Now, was there anything that was included in this in this period of time that may have affected those numbers 2% of the way? Like, I don't know, maybe restaurants closing at 10 by law? Maybe that, or the fact that restaurants can only serve like quarter capacity or half capacity, which would make people who wanted to eat in a restaurant have to get earlier reservations. So I thought that was pretty funny, because the numbers that Resi gave, in my opinion, repudiated. One of those two made it clear that actually it wasn't true. That even with a pandemic stuck in the middle of this thing, it was only a 2% difference.
I would say 2% is noise, right?
But even if it's not noise, when you throw a pandemic in the mix, it's being like, that's even less than I thought it would be. I thought it might be 10% when you add in the fact that restaurants closed at 10, so if you wanted to go, you had to go earlier.
I would
like
also
8 months.
Yeah, I would say a fraction of that 2%. Also, the restaurant grading system, critters at night, people who work at night, frequency or turnover at night. Like, you get into some trouble there when you're up, like when you're a 24-hour restaurant, right?
Well,
like, what's that sound in the corner?
Yeah. Well, I was going to make that point too, though, is that even though I think that Resi's numbers are goofy because they're including the pandemic, which would have shaded things earlier automatically, I do think, though, and we've talked about this on this very same Perfect Pod in the past, is that there are restaurants that are closing earlier than they should be. And I think that's true. And I don't know if that's an LA like aesthetic, or it's
giving
just a carryover.
LA, right? It's
giving LA, a carryover from the pandemic. Remember, Frenchette's closing at like 10. Mm-hmm. Like, these are restaurants that in my mind should be like, roiling until midnight, and they're closing at 10.
Yeah, it should be turning into like a salon kind of bar vibe by 11:30, where you could still get like a bar steak, but restaurants don't really care about that stuff anymore, like scenes, community, all that, and I don't blame them. Like, there's no money in that. There's just a lot of lurkers. But when you hear about the golden age of New York, it's like, oh, we argued about painting and communists until 4 a.m. I don't know, man. Like, do we want that? Turns out maybe not.
I mean, people can say what they want about Lower East Side French restaurants, Christmas places.
They do.
But hey, look, one of note stays open till 1. They serve till 1. People are there hanging out. That is a valuable asset to the community. Yep. Respect that.
There's a restaurant that opened up near where I live, and it was anticipated. There was lead-in. It was like a sister restaurant of a very popular one, and packed. The first weekend packed. It was nice. It was a bit higher price point, maybe like $2 to $3 signs.
You know what, Quo? I'm going to make you name names.
Dick and Jane's. and it was like a beautiful cocktail bar, everything. And then they put up a piece of paper on their window that was like, we're no longer serving brunch, their most popular thing, because they couldn't find people to work for them. No servers, no cooks. They were just like, we can't find people to do it. We can't do it. And I'm like, yo, the whole, like, we talk about all these things we're talking about, like people, customer habits. And I'm like, oh, the answer to a lot of these strange percentiles and percentages kind of like resides in the thing itself. I bet if we rolled up to WoHop and be like, yo, how come you guys aren't 24 hours? They're like, we got tired. We don't want to do it anymore. It's like we make the same money. No one comes in at like 6 a.m. I don't know, you know?
Well, I mean, some of these spots in Midtown, same deal. It's like Le Roc, awesome restaurant. That they have incredible chartreuse. Like, I suggest everyone gets a flight.
Flights.
Yeah, at least 16 of them.
Shout out to Brad.
But you know, they're shout out to Brad. But they are not open on, I believe, Saturday or Sunday. And,
Crazy.
What's the other one up there that's from Ignacio Lupa? Is that right?
I think so.
I think that's what it's called. I haven't been, but they're not. I think they close at like 7 on Sundays. It's like there are like wonky hours all over the place, and maybe these are somewhat neighborhood specific. Maybe they're based on staffing. Maybe they're based on who's populating a neighborhood at a certain time of day and so forth. But you know, I think these are different like causes and issues than we're just like LA. It's giving LA. Like I need an Erewhon and I want to have like a wheatgrass because like now I don't eat late. I think these are these are different things.
Does LA own that? You know, when someone says LA, I immediately think of Erewhon. I think of self-care. Are they allowed to claim that? They might be. Like, New York is allowed to claim Zweigels. So, like, is LA the rightful author of health?
Yeah, right. Because if you talk to someone from LA, would they be like, "Yeah, that's us"?
That's me, baby. Yeah.
I'm like, I know like graffiti writers from LA. They'd be like, yeah, totally, man. Yeah, that's what I identify with. I identify with crystals, and then Santa Monica and yoga. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
No.
I'm throwing up a set.
Yeah, I think those people are the one who talk most about LA. But when I think of LA, it's people canceling on you on the drive over. It's like, yeah, let's go meet there. It's like, totally. It's like, yeah, I bailed. There was too much traffic. See you next trip. That's LA to me.
Well, this is
yeah.
You're making a great point, though. Keep going. I'm thinking this through. Sorry to interrupt. I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, nailed it. You nailed it.
Well, like, if you think about health in New York City, there's an insane health culture here. Like, gym memberships are club memberships. And, like, SoulCycle was... The trends here are as palpable as they were... that they seem to be in L.A. But L.A. claiming, just because the climate's amazing, there's beaches, there's sun, that they are, like, the creators of this self-care, clean living thing. But when I think of all the people I've met in LA, and I'm a washed old man now.
No,
I don't
say that.
Don't do it. But I know more healthy people in New York than LA, and this is bias and personal and my whole demographic, whatever. But if LA was so healthy, why'd you move to a city that driving is a primary mode of transportation?
Checkmate quo.
Did it. I did it to him.
Wow. Put them in the torture chamber. LA is in hell right now after what you just did. Well, my thing here is that this is some BMM shit, though, right? For like New York media mafia. Mm-hmm. Where like New York, when you're on Twitter, is like about bodegas and chopped cheeses and like, you know, grittiness and subways and bodega guys and pizza rats, right? It's like the New York Nico-ification. Like, this is what New York is. It's tough. Greatest city on earth, baby.
Mob deep.
And then the definition of LA is not any of those grimy things about LA, which has just as many grimy things as New York. but it's like
if not more. Yeah.
right, but it's based on what like the media class from New York experiences when they go to LA or when they visit LA, which is typically not the same kind of city as New York, where you are walking everywhere, you are, on the subway, you're amongst the people. So New York, you can have these sort of gritty proletariat points of view, but LA, you're going out there and you're renting a car and you're renting an Airbnb in Silver Lake and you're driving to some spots and you go back and you have no interaction with the city itself. So like I would say that LA is not the one claiming wellness. It's New York media class defining LA through their experience there.
For sure, right? Because if you think about the cultural contributions LA has made in our lifetime, it's like hair metal, like Skid Row area, like Guns N' Roses, LA Guns, all that stuff. And then like gangster rap, right? NWA, Ice Cube, all that stuff.
It is wild how much American culture was defined by 90s LA in a way that it really is not at this point at all. But when you look and you had like NWA gangster rap, but then you had the riots, you had OJ. Like there were these
John
huge,
Singleton.
all of that, right? And like to me, like America as like a nation was really defined by these incidents in LA.
For sure.
Rodney King trial, the riots, and then OJ. Like those were really about race and class and really defined, the United States. And part of this was Ezra Edelman, who's come on the pod in the past, very smart dude. In his OJ documentary, really pinned that down too. So like I'm not coming up with this necessarily, but he really did nail that down, that how OJ and his life and that trial really defined America well.
Sprawl, the idea of opportunity, the West, exploration, the edge of the earth. Like these are all amazing ideas. The movie Chinatown, right? But like, I'm thinking about LA's influence in maybe for a Zoomer or a millennial, and it would center around the Kardashian family, who we're obviously fans of because they're fascinating people. But like,
and because they bless NBA players with the Kardashian blessing.
They saved Lamar Odom's damn life. But it is, Devin Booker, MVP, top 15 in the MVP ladder. Could he have done it without running into the Kardashian blessing?
They're calling him the Tatum of Phoenix.
Tatum-esque. But, yeah, to be honest, I'd be mad if I was living in Atlanta or Miami, because a lot of like the cultural gravity doesn't reside in New York and LA anymore. And to your exact point, it is kept afloat by a group of like less than 50 writers who kind of perpetuate that, like we're doing now. We're perpetuating this topic of conversation.
But we're giving people the real.
Atlanta, step in. That is a crazy city.
In other New York Times op-ed news that we need to propagate, there was a somewhat strange op-ed, and I think it was literally in the op-ed section. The prior one was in the style section, which I exposed how these stories get made. But this one, I believe, is an op-ed, and there was I think it was a man, I would believe. And he was listening to the podcast Red Scare. And then, check this out. He stopped listening to it.
Damn.
What?
Damn.
He was first, let me break this down again. At first, he listened to that podcast in his headphones, walking around, walking his dog. And then later, he stopped. And he recounted this saga of listening and stopping listening. In, I don't know, 1,200 words, 2,000 words. And it ran in the op-ed section, I believe, which was strange because a lot of times those are dedicated to political issues of the day or really pressing issues such as free speech on college campuses, things that really affect the daily life of Americans everywhere. But I was waiting for the kicker, and the kicker was he stopped listening to the pod.
Well, I would claim, as someone who's worked and it does work with the op-ed. It's a pretty open thing. I love this because I'm a zine guy, right? Like, the first thing I got into as a kid was making zines. What were those zines about? Nothing. It was like pre-Seinfeld. It was like, so I was walking down St. Mark Street and I saw this record store and I bought this record. This is what I think about it. It's like, and then I bought zines about that stuff. Everyone doing the same nothingness, right? And there's a cool like idea of boredom in there. The 90s, Gen X, love it. But then kind of Twitter took that over, being like, last night I was like, I'm just going to fire off a tweet. Icing my knee watching lasagna videos. Like, why not? Right? Like, this is like a form of what I know as zine culture, or like a kind of discussion that was new in the 90s just because of Xerox machines and a reproduction. And now we get like the op-ed section kind of, I think, borrowing that idea. And
You know what? I retract that. And I have to make this pod perfect. It's my duty, and I think this is how we have to do it. Is that this was also a style section piece, but it was an op-ed.
Okay.
And it's called Episode. Now, I don't necessarily know the conceit, but it's called Episode. Maybe it's about media consumption or whatever. I know that no one has replaced Ben Smith and as like the media reporter, so maybe this is what they're doing instead. So anyway, it's another style section piece. It's in the bucket that it would be put in is called Episode.
Yo, style section is crushing it. This is great stuff, because if you can light this media world aflame with these takes, man, you're doing something right.
Ooh, they had to issue a correction. I hate when that happens. Ooh.
Oh, what was the correction?
Because of an editing error, an earlier version of this article misstated the acting credits of Dasha. She did not appear in the show Only Murders in the Building. Well,
oh, I tried to watch that. That was tough.
I was going to say, I didn't think she was in that.
Which is interesting, because that's definitely like modeled after New Yorker stuff. But I thought they was going to issue a correction, be like, oh, our dog walker does still listen to Red Scare.
Since this was published, he started listening to it again, and we're gonna issue a retraction.
He said he stopped listening to it, but in order to write this article, he started listening to it more. So we have to issue kind of a semi-retraction here. Shout out to Red Scare, man. Making white dudes angry constantly is their bag.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's what their bag is.
It's a byproduct of their many bags, maybe.
I mean, I don't know. Like I thought, to me, the thing that was kind of noticeable about this was that they've always been edgy, and this writer really like glazed over that point. And then when they tilted more right wing in some of their ethos, that was what turned him off. And I was like, you were fine with them saying like retard all the time. You know what I mean? You liked all the edgy stuff, and then like you didn't like when they had some political opinions that you disagreed with. But like you could have said early on, like, I liked their edgy shit. I liked that they were like, you know, pushing back on liberalism in these certain ways, but he kind of glazed over that and didn't really mention that stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I love really smart people, and those two are from Red Scare clearly know what they do. But yeah, I mean, must there be a fair discussion of ideas, right? If I say something like, I hated a Batman movie, it's like, well, tell me other movies that you liked. Do you have to do that? Does there have to be context here?
Yeah, I think
it helps, right? I mean, be a good lawyer about it. Not always, if you're trying to prove a point, right? Like, context can maybe lessen your point. And since this isn't a discussion, it's an article written with one singular direction. It doesn't benefit from him being like, well, you know, but like, to be honest, like, I'm not 100% on this.
I mean, to me, like the entire premise of this essay is this sentence. But somewhere along the way, the podcast began to grate on me. Like,
I love it. It's some zine ass thought. Yeah.
I liked it, and then I decided I didn't like it as much. You know what? Give me a platform. Let me write about this.
Well, this frustrates me in the way we discussed on the last Perfect Pod, and hopefully this Perfect Pod will be even more perfect. But when Toxic Knicks fans say trade Julius Randle, I'm like, fair enough. Give me, for example, for who? And they're like, doesn't matter, just trade him. I'm like, well, for what player? This? And they're like, no, not him. I'm like, well, this is a really difficult conversation to have. I hear your idea. I accept that you stopped listening to Red Scare. But, like, I can't really get on board with you until you give me something else.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I just think that people's appetite for certain things, like rises, ebbs, wanes, etc., right? There are so many shows that I enjoyed, like the first season of, and I'm like, vouch for that show. And I just stopped watching it. Couldn't even really explain why.
The new season of The Crown is unwatchable. I cannot get through it, man. I love that show. Oof.
Like, I watched Better Call Saul first season. Like, this show is good.
Ooh, that got better.
It's well written, and I just bailed on it.
Damn.
There was no turning point. I'm like, yeah, I'm out. But that's cool.
Oh, it's so
do I think
good, dude.
Do I think it? No, but I mean, I don't think it's bad. I was like, yeah, I'm out on it.
Yeah, that's how you felt about the Sixers too. You were just like so into this losing, this just like taking these L's, and then when they started dominating, you're like, I'm out.
Ugh, come on, bring back Hink Dog. I want some more L's.
But the Red Scare thing is kind of a dead end, right? Like, we've reached the point where they have spread their takes so wide that it just feels like the argument is taken on a different idea. And we're no longer talking about them. Are they communists? Are they Catholics? It's like they're kind of doing a free-for-all fuck you. And when we try to talk about them, they've already kind of like pivoted to something else, like height supremacy.
I mean, that is our wheelhouse.
That is certainly our wheelhouse.
And like Andrew, like, I love you like a brother, but we have some really stark differences in our opinions on heightism.
You're so ashamed.
I don't know
right.
what brings this up and where the root cause of this is, but
Right.
this is one of the few places where we really diverge.
You live a life of a humiliated tall king who wanders aimlessly on the basketball court with the ball, not getting these buckets. And
I just think short people should be caged.
Yeah, hopefully not in your mind cage where you struggle so desperately to use your height for something useful in this world. But, on Twitter, no one can see your towering height.
Well, no, I just think short people are great as pets. You know what I mean? Like treated well, just in enclosures. Like, give them a nice little enclosure, where they can live out their lives, like a dollhouse where they can drink out of thimbles and do that, all like short king activities.
I accept this because life expectancy being so much smaller than ours, because of the heart having to do all that extra work. But it's really the mental illness that kills tall kings. Feeling these feelings of heightism, maybe it might be the oxygen up there, but they die these miserable, depressing lives where, like, wait a second, I did nothing with my height. Well, short kings are just like fucking chilling.
The saddest part of this, though, is that with our shorter lives, when we topple and fall, often we'll claim the lives of several short people who are underfoot. When we fall like a redwood and just pin them to the ground where they're forced to starve beneath like one of our limbs.
But see, that's the overcompensation a tall king has, because there's so many short kings. It's like lying on a pincushion. We just carry your body away for that large carbon footprint of your decaying, useless, extra length.
And let me tell you, I hate when that happens.
Yeah, it's true. The carbon footprint is embarrassing. It's frankly, it's like the extra toll you put on our Earth is humiliating.
There has never been a better time to be short. Speaking of a tall king, Theophilus London has been found.
Wow,
that's a tall king. They
Yeah, it's
listed him
one of
about
your guys,
6'2".
man.
6'2", he might be 6'3". I felt like they kind of undersold him. Like if he was in Hoka's, I might give him 6'4". You know, like have you seen this guy? Like how awful would that be, right? Like Ben Dietrich is missing and like 5'11". You're like, all right, you've lured me back to the surface, guys. I'm 6'3" in Hoka's. All right, like I'm not like KD, you know. Like I want you guys to know my real height. I'm not lying about my height. Like that, I think that's a good way of getting tall people, like to come out of their cushy little lairs if they've gone missing. Just list their height significantly lower.
I'm trying to think of the tall king all stars. You have Donald Trump's son, Theophilus London, Elon Musk, Machine Gun Kelly. You guys are crushing.
Wait, what are they listing Musk as?
Musk is tall, right?
I don't think so.
I mean, 6'2", that's you.
No, he's not 6'2". That's a lie.
He's 6'2". He's 6'2".
God, it's a lie. I've walked right by that guy. Lie. No way.
The internet never lies. First of all,
All right, fair enough. You're right.
6'1" and a half. You round it up to 6'2".
I have walked right by him, or he has walked right by me.
Yeah, but you got to take off.
I'm saying he's 5'11".
But you're wearing Hoka's and he's barefoot. I don't know how that situation happens, but it happened.
So Theophilus was found, and that's good news. But it was funny because this was a guy who his family hadn't spoken to in a few months. And then it was even people who were close to them hadn't spoken with him since October. And there were some sightings of him, that implied that he was dealing with substance abuse issues, seen in Skid Row and things like that. And then there was this, this kind of like this manhunt, and everyone was posting like, "Have you seen Theophilus London?" And from that, I assumed that he was probably not alive.
I feared the worst as well.
Thank God he is. But I was like, if this guy hasn't been online in a couple months, and his friends who he's tight with haven't seen him in a couple months, and I hit some people up that, that we know in common, and they didn't have any additional information to share. They were all just like, dude, I have no idea. And that went for pretty much everyone. It was like a kind of shocking lack of even small amounts of information or gossip. It was just like, we don't know. No idea. But then after they found him, I was kind of like, well, they just put all his business in the fucking street.
A bunch of snitches.
I'm like, what? He didn't talk to his family? So now everyone's like, talking about how he's on Skid Row and we found it. Like, dude, I'm just out here on Skid Row. Leave me alone. Like, he's a grown adult. He's 35 years old. Why are we doing a manhunt for somebody who, whether it's because of addiction or his own volition, whatever, this is a grown adult who went and started living on Skid Row. Like, I don't know, man. I kind of had mixed feelings about this.
He recognized his flaws as a tall king and said, if I'm going to get healthy in my mind like someone from LA, I'm not going to get rid of these screens. I'm not going to have a phone. This is corrupting my tall man brain. So maybe they just couldn't reach him on the phone.
Well, I mean, that was definitely part of this, right? That he wasn't on social media, that they couldn't find him. And again, my assumption was that, he had probably perished, and his family clearly thought the same. But after they found him, I was like, isn't he entitled to just go off the rails? Yeah. Like, without it being like a public thing? Without it being a manhunt for him? It's kind of juvenile.
Yes, that too. And another layer of this story is like how quickly the framing of something happens. To your point, worried family, we feel bad for them. He's fine. Are they snitches? Like, ooh, is he dead? Like, oh, that would be the worst fucking thing. It's like, he's fine. It's like, all right, my opinions resume of him. And I think about that in terms of like recent current events. especially with like maybe what happened in the House of Representatives, being like, these bunch of agitators have so much power that they're going to like put this whole process to a standstill. And the minute they had no power, they're like, what a bunch of losers. It happened in like one night. And that kind of tragic thing that happened in a football game, like a player's random freak accident, his heart stops on the field. It's horrifying. We are all watching. I was definitely watching. And just like panic and feeling so bad. And then immediately people started attacking other people on social media for not saying the right thing. Whatever, fair enough. But then he turns out okay, and he's now tweeting, and he's on video, and he's okay. And then that whole framing switches, being like, well, why is everyone so angry about this? Can't we just like care about this situation in different ways? And it's just like a difference of 12 hours sometimes.
Well, yeah, the thing, and forgive me, I don't even know his name. I'm not a football fan. I'm glad he's okay, obviously, but I was only following the story in like an ambient way. I never even saw the play. I didn't want to. But
It didn't
remember,
look like much. It was crazy.
there happened to be some entertaining basketball games on TV at the same time.
Yep.
And again, I don't watch football, so I was not even aware that was occurring. And then it started kind of breaking through like the Twitter feed, like, oh my God, this thing happened. I hope he's okay. And I was like, what happened? I was like, what's occurring? I wanted to know, and I was like, okay, that sounds terrible. Hopefully it's good. And then I went back to watching basketball. And I remember seeing some people on Twitter be like, how can you guys be talking about basketball when an athlete is hurt? I'm like,
Oh, forget that.
like,
Yeah.
wait. You're the one watching football. Not me. I don't watch that sport. I for all I care, get rid of it. I think it's dangerous and it gives people brain damage. Like, I think that sport's fucked up. I don't like it. It's like militarizing. It's lame. Whatever. But
I mean, yeah.
But you're gonna say I can't tweet about like Joel Embiid or Matisse Thybulle because someone got hurt in a different sport? That does not fly. Sorry.
This is the cop behavior that I think is going away. This happened a lot during like the pandemic for many reasons, right? Because there was huge things like BLM, police stuff. All these things came to the surface in really serious ways on Twitter. And then I thought it was okay for someone just to be like, hey, my new album's coming out tomorrow. I'm like, cool. This is what Twitter is. It's surrealism. It's like just scattershot. And different ideas butt up against each other in your feed in really surreal ways. But when people's identity on that site is to like critique the way you use it, I'm like, well, of course this is going to exist in every platform, but like this is not interesting to me. And I think about this every time. To your experience, I thought about this when DeMar Hamlin got hurt. I was like, I don't want to speak to this because I have nothing to add. I'm going to tweet about something that I'm experiencing, which is basketball. And I feel bad because I just witnessed something horrible too. But me experiencing it isn't tweetable. Twitter is not an extension of our lives. It's meant for jokes about movies about killer chefs. It's meant to make fun of LA versus New York debates. But as soon as it becomes about work or like your reality, I'm just like, this is going to be frustrating because there's no way to put into correct words in real time on the record what's changing every minute.
Well, look, I just know that I saw some people in the park, and from a distance, it looked like they were closer than 6 feet and unmasked. And I'm going to tweet about that.
Right. I mean, fair enough, right? Like that.
They were sitting around a tree, and there may have been a bottle of wine there, and they are giving everyone COVID.
Fair enough. I just don't follow those people or care about that kind of goings on Twitter, and I know that's like a lot of it, but I just think you should not feel bad, and I should not feel bad just being like, yo, this basketball player is having a huge game. like that's like what we're doing, right?
Well, but right. Because my thing was like, well, are we going to apply this kind of discretion to everything? Like,
Yep, we
a
cannot.
guy just got hit by a car. How can you talk about White Lotus?
No.
Just like everything. Like, where do we draw the lines? Like, well, it's an athlete got hurt, so you can't talk about another sport. Oh, okay, cool. Can I talk about food? I don't know. I guess. What are you talking about? Buffalo wings? Ooh, okay. Can't talk about that then.
Yeah, it this was a joke in the 80s. Like, there's starving children in Africa. There are. It sucks. It is a huge issue on our planet. If I'm just like, yo, that 360 dunk was crazy, and someone's like, hey, someone just died today, I'm like, yo, shout out to that person. I don't know. Like, when a famous musician dies and I don't care about them, I don't know what to do. I'm just like, I'm sorry for your loss.
Well, you're just like, look, I just want to see the dead disrespected more.
If they're tall, good riddance. If they're like 5'6" and below, ooh, pause everything.
Like, look, as a polite short king, I refrained from saying how I really felt about this person while they were alive. Like, I always supported them. Now that they're dead, body's still warm. Let me tell you the real. That dude sucked.
Well, the Theophilus thing is interesting, right? Because we kind of bring up his name because he was so omnipresent in our nightlife world for a year or two, and he was around like totally. Even on social media, I used to talk to him quite a bit, but I kind of lost track, as I do with many people I knew, and I hadn't thought about him in a long time until this news came up, and I was like, ooh, this is like very sad, and I hope everything is okay with someone I knew once. And now that he's okay, like, can I be off the hook, or now do we have to, like, I'm assuming he needs more help than just like, he's alive, he's good, everyone move on with your lives. Like, are we now going to take care of this person moving forward? Like, probably not until like something else bad happens to him and he's going to pop up again. And I don't know what social media does to help someone. When Damar Hamlin got hurt, like, they raised quite a bit of money for his nonprofit, which was awesome. But like, what are we doing for Theophilus? I'm like, I don't know. Does he have nice friends and family? Can people around him help him? Because we can't keep tweeting about him. That's not how this thing works.
Look, we did our job. We found him.
Right.
We did it.
Yeah. I mean, he's alive and done. Where is he? I don't care. In what state? I don't mind.
Like, did he want to be found? I don't know. I don't know if he wanted to be found. I don't know. We found him, dude. We went to the ends of the earth and we found him. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Good job, Andrew. Good job, Ben. We did it.
Thanks. We did it. Yeah, that's, we're activists.
We're like Magellan. We found him. We discovered Theophilus London.
Yeah. I'm happy he's okay.
Unearthed him. Of course.
Are we gonna buy his tracks? Maybe Theophilus London parties, like mixtapes. Let's go. Let's bring him back. Like,
dude, we found him.
Okay, that's enough.
It's over. We unearthed Theophilus.
What if he was just wandering around like Publix supermarkets or stores in Florida, and we were like committing a Twitter coup, kind of, in trying to buck the trend of traditional usage of that platform, while he was chilling with his boy DeSantis in Florida. Heat culture.
I just want to see your man Bolsonaro rolling around with a couple tubes up his nose in a Wegmans, buying the components to a Thomas Bryant garbage plate.
Is this like one of those like gangster situations where an otherwise healthy person goes to trial and they're like hooked up to oxygen tubes and wheelchairs and stuff?
Is he Vinny the Chin wandering around Publix?
Yeah. See Johnny Forehead just like chilling in heat garb.
Like, instead of a bathrobe in the West Village, he's just wearing like a
Jimmy Butler.
Tyler Hero authentic goose bar.
Yeah, a Riny Cycli throwback. Just like, ooh, he's really fallen off. Like we can't hold him accountable. Look, he's a shell of a man.
Look at him. He's at La Sandwichery buying various kinds of Dijons.
Yeah. He has 2 kinds of mustard on that sandwich. We can't hold him responsible
He's
for this
not
political
well.
coup. Yeah. He's dining on pate at 4 a.m. Something's amiss.
This is a sick, sick man.
Are we not all humans?
Just be an empath for once, Andrew.
Yeah. Can't a man on his way off this earth enjoy an beer at the Deuce and have a copa sandwich at La Sandwichery?
He's walking around with a Delano used to be, asking for Tolga, who ran the door at the Purple Party.
No one wears Dan Marley when they know they're not going to immediately die.
Yeah, but this is is this the banality of evil? Is that what we're talking about here?
Oh, man. I mean, did you see footage of that coup? Everyone was wearing like footy jerseys. It was kind of incredible.
Yeah, that was jarring because I'm like, here we're wearing like American stuff, and mentally we associate that with, real patriots.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they love red hats and flags and
Yeah.
Zubaz.
Hey, don't bring Zubaz into this, man. What did Zubaz do to deserve this?
Look, I don't know where Zubaz falls on the political spectrum.
Didn't he have a double-double last night? Huge double-double.
Is Zubaz right-wing garb? Is it left-wing garb? Who can say?
No one knows. No one
Who
knows.
can say? I would say I associate it most with like football, which would veer a little bit conservative. But when you look at it now, you're like, yeah, it's kind of fresh though.
Wild. Yeah.
It's kind of tight. Like you're wearing weird like tiger zebra stripes on your sweatpants. I'm like, I don't know if I could get away with that, but it looks pretty tight.
Like, yeah, man. Like what was it? The '86 Bears, like with those striped drawstring pants, like kind of tight. We don't hate. I love the NFL, but when people criticize the NFL, I accept that. But the players are the best. Like, I love the NFL workers. Like, they have amazing celebrations. They're kind of salty. They're interesting. Those are like my favorite athlete personalities in that league. So like when I think of Zubaz, I think of huge personalities.
So I'm looking on eBay right now.
$500.
No, they're cheap
What?
because they made zillions of them. They sold so many. It's like,
So are we talking vintage or like reissue?
well, it's hard to say because some of them are brand new. So maybe Zubaz is still
Dead stock?
Well, when it says condition new, there's like 2,000, 2,500 new ones.
Are you sure they're just not like
I think they're still
new
making
ones?
them.
Yeah,
they are new. Yeah.
I know they did a collab recently or in the last few years maybe with the NFL again. I don't know. But did they change from the stripes, like the wildlife stripes?
A little bit. Like they used to be zebra stripes, but now they're doing more patterns. I'm looking at the retro ones, right? So like $30, vintage '90s Zubaz sweatpants, Chargers colors, some yellow and stuff. Okay, vintage
That's
Green Bay
tough.
Packers, $21. So they are very affordable. But yeah, you're looking at it now. I'm like, who's to say this isn't Kalina Strada?
Well,
Baggy, pattern, colorful. Yeah, sure.
I'm trying to think like thank God for the giant fitted hat trend that's happening now. Are you following this?
I am intently. Go on.
Incredible. But like the whole hype beast promise of like 5 to 10 years ago of like these huge all over prints, bright colors, like as with most things, I didn't realize what I was looking at was the actual moment. I was like, oh, Zubaz is going to take over. But it was really just living its life course then. So it ended up not like making it to normies. I think like right after that, the whole like Noah thing happened, and like the preppy kind of subdued look took over. But I really wish we had gone insane, where everyone was just pattern camouflage.
Yeah, you make a good point. It's interesting because you have people who are like into fashion, and they wear stuff like, okay, we're just wearing Rick, just Rick, nothing but Rick, whatever, right? And then you have kind of
Rick Fox's t-shirt line for his gaming team.
Exactly, just Rick.
Yeah.
Toronto King, land of chuckers, and Rick Fox.
Right.
A handsome man, that Rick Fox. But he was married to Vanessa Williams, right?
He starred in He Got Game. Didn't they try to make him kind of a movie guy? But he was.
Yeah, he was also in Eddie.
Oh yeah,
as a New York Knick.
That documentary about the basketball team in New York City.
Yeah, the true story of a cabbie who went on to coach the Knicks, and that cabbie's name, Eddie.
That's right. But go on. Your point.
But the point was, I think you had adequately described. But like that, I mean, is it Jound, JJJ Jound, however you say that shit, an ALD, like kind of neo preppy style, and that does seem to be the sort of dominant element for this like sort of middle class of like men's fashion, where it's like you have edgy stuff, like I'm wearing Rick, I'm wearing colorful stuff, and then you have don't care about anything, like you're just wearing whatever, and then you have the middle ground is very like kind of J. Crew again, or like almost Banana Republic but cooler, if that makes sense. Like Abercrombie. It's like very very neo prep.
Yeah, and when we did our perfect 2020 through intro pod, I was like, I just want one thing, is for people to get 5 to 75% weirder. And if that 5% is just like making a fitted hat 4 times its natural size, like let's go. It's incredible, especially when you're delivering some heater opinions after a game. It's just wonderful, man.
It is wonderful. You know what else is wonderful? The sport of basketball. You should write a book about it.
Wow.
Call it the wonder of basketball.
Hooping.
The wonder of hoopers. A history of the modern sport.
Well, let's go. Let's talk about some teams that haven't been wonderful.
Well, I was going to jump into like the only story that matters in the NBA, Thomas Bryant, but we can.
All right, let's do some Thomas Bryant talk.
We can wait.
Well, let's. All right. What do you want to start off with this perfect conversation?
Can we talk about the log jam of mediocrity in the Western Conference? Are we allowed to say that? Is this going to turn people off, and they're going to write an essay about how they love cookies hoops until we called the Western Conference a logjam of mediocrity?
Before they do that, they better look at those standings.
Are we allowed to say that? Is it legal?
I mean, just straight facts, man. If you look at the standings in the West.
Facts only on this pod. So, as you said, look at the standings. We have Sacramento Kings, 2 games above 500. Golden State Warriors, 500. Clippers, 500. Phoenix, 1 game under. Minnesota, 1 game under. Portland, 1 game under. Lakers, 2 games under.
The Thomas Bryant Lakers.
The Thomas Bryant's Lakers.
Right.
The garbage plate of the Western Conference. Right. Now, in that mix, we have the Warriors, who won the title last year. We have the Clippers, who, by Vegas odds, were like a top 3 team going into the season. We have Phoenix, who had the best record in the NBA last year before flaming out, no pun intended. And then we also have Minnesota, who, to me, was a potential contender based on some of their offseason investments and a large Frenchman. And we have the Lakers, who have obviously LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
Right.
The logjam of mediocrity. Talk about it, Andrew. What's going on here?
Injury. If you just go down this list, right? Like, obviously, the Sacramento Kings, strange story there, but like the Clippers hurt, Suns hurt, Timberwolves hurt, Lakers hurt. But like, what if a 500 record isn't as descriptive as we think it is? Like, of course there's noise. Of course it's like strength of the field. If you had to play any other teams, healthy players or hurt players, if there were trap games, how many times they played like a tanking team like the Rockets. I would say like the standings that they stand now don't tell us everything. And I'm including the great teams too. Like, I don't think we've seen the real Nuggets yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea of the regular season is pretty irrelevant. It's not exactly groundbreaking. But to me, that should affect how we view games too, right? If we're gonna say, look, is your team good? We know. The record doesn't matter. We know, as you said. Are you healthy? Are your players there? We know the rankings. Like, when they are intact, can they defend? Can they score? Like, we know we can put these teams into hierarchies. And
Like, Kawhi has to look at Denver and Paul George and be like, just get me there. We got this.
right, and that may happen. It may not. But when I look at it, this is how I view regular season games. Like, during a game, I'll be rooting for a team, right? You have a rooting interest. You want a team to win. Generally speaking, I feel like anytime you watch a game, you end up kind of acquiring a rooting interest. Like it may be minor.
Yeah.
But these teams are cool, and then when it comes down, you're like, you know what? I'd like to kind of see these guys win. I'd just like to see them hit a game winner. I'd just whatever the case may be. Oh, they got a bad call. I'd like to see them overcome that. Whatever. But like, as soon as the game is over, I stop caring immediately. Like, immediately. Even when Kawhi hit that shot against Philly, the magnetic rims, it's bouncing around. And I'm like, it drops. I'm like, holy shit. All right. And I didn't feel anything afterwards. Like, I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. I'm just like, okay, that happened. It's over. And I feel like is even a totally different dimension than a regular season game. So when people are like mad about the results of a game, it kind of does bewilder me. When Knicks fans were mad that they lost to the Mavs, I'm like, you're mad after the game? When we saw Luka Doncic have like one of the best performances of his career, an all-timer, and I had a freakish play to send the game to overtime, and you're mad about this days later. I'm like, I can't view sports like that.
I'll do devil's advocate here, because we talked about this. I'm in the heart of toxic Knicks bing bong darkness, right? I've seen it. I'm in there, and my just devil's advocate, because I agree with you obviously, but would be, is this a form of toxic positivity? Is this like, hey, there's like suffering out there. Theophilus London needs our help. Are we worried about a game? Are you actually upset about a game? And where I can kind of see Bing Bong Nation having a point is just like, well, yeah, we care a lot about this thing. This is what we do. Like, if they were like lucid about it, right? They were just like, being upset is the thing. So if you take that away from me, I become like kind of a sociopath, and I have no feelings, and that's what I'm not interested in.
Well, yeah, you've just described me. Well done.
No, I agree. Like, we wrote a whole book about it. Like, I want the Knicks to win a championship. Watching Luka Doncic have one of the most memorable performances in my recent life against my team is like, that sucks, but kind of amazing. And it's not like a martyr thing. I don't feel bad for my squad. I'm just like, well, like, where are we going anyway? This wasn't like a playoff game where I'd be kind of like, ooh, that hurts. I'm like, they're a 500 team. Like, that was memorable as hell.
Well, part of this is, like, I guess what I'm saying is, even in the big moments, I can go from, feeling emotion about during the game to turning it off afterwards. But overall, getting back to the idea of the Western Conference of mediocrity, it's like, what's interesting about that mix is that you're going to have a couple of these teams not make the playoffs. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Though there are some of these guys where, even with, the play-in obviously makes this a lot more casual.
Yeah.
you know, am I doing the math right here? 10 teams make it in, right? Mm-hmm. It's like one of these teams will be out, but not a bunch of them. So like LA, Portland, Minnesota, Phoenix, Clippers. One of them is going to miss the playoffs. Golden State.
Utah.
Like that's.
Yeah.
But Utah's going to be out. They're not making it.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
What I'm saying is they're in the 12th spot, and they're just not as good as these other teams.
They're only one game out of the 10 spot, though. They're not as good. I agree, but
I just mean I don't think they're as good. They're losing more games, whatever. I like they're a totally fine team, but I mean yes, one of these teams is not making it, but that's not as spicy as if like 3 of them weren't going to make it. So like I do think the play-in is it's cool, but it did really alter the math for like playoff desperation. So we're like, all right, the flip side is you're looking at all these teams like, they're all mediocre, they're all in jeopardy of not making the playoffs. But the thing is, like 6 of them, 7 will. That isn't even stressful.
Well, I would claim even in the previous format with the top 8 making it, it wasn't that stressful either until the last couple weeks where it was like, damn, this is basically a playoff game. If they win, they're in. It's like a win or go home at this point for numerous situations. And I love watching other games that affect standings. But like, I'll trade that for a play-in tournament. Like the play-in tournament is cool enough where I'm like, it's the same level of awesome, right?
Oh yeah. I have no. I don't really dislike the play-in because it happens really fast. It's it's 2 more games, then we're in the playoffs. Like cool, yeah. But yeah, if we care about the in baseball terminology, like the pennant run, basketball is more or less eliminated.
From 1950,
exactly. But basketball's eliminated that with this because, as I said, we could look at this and if there's only 8 teams, we'd say like, whoa, Minnesota, Portland, Lakers. Those guys may not make the playoffs. Phoenix, imagine that. Sure. Best record in the NBA last year, not making the playoffs. But with the play-in, you're like, what are you really stressed about? You just got to beat one of them. You just can't be the worst out of all those guys.
Yeah.
But, it is funny, though, that when you look at the playoffs, and as you said, this is all injury-related stuff. So we've talked about this. It obviously makes sense that they should revert to or revert's the wrong word, but that they should allow seeds to pick their opponent in the first round. Like it is so obvious because this is bullshit, right?
Yeah.
If you're Denver, you're like, okay, we did it. We waded our way through the whole regular season. We're the first seed. And like, cool, you're playing Phoenix.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like
thanks.
AD's healthy. He's rolling now. So you're playing LeBron and Anthony Davis. Like, it sucks. Yeah.
Because you'd obviously rather play Sacramento, who is currently in the 5 spot, than the Warriors, the Clippers, Phoenix, a healthy Minnesota, or a healthy Lakers, 100%. And you're like, no, actually, the Mavs are going to play them, who are barely above mediocre. They get to play the easiest opponent in the playoffs, and the number 1 seed plays the hardest. It's just goofy.
It's goofy. But, like to the NBA's credit, the last 4 standing teams are always nasty, and it always seems okay. Like the Mavs, that was a bit shaky, but I agree with you. Obviously, I think if they had to redo it, you pick your opponent. I don't think the owners would agree to anything that messes up their wallet, and everything's going great for them, so nothing will get changed in our lifetime.
Look, you can be a paper finalist like last year's Celtics, for example. A team that was not even really a top 5 team in the league who just got this incredibly fortuitous route where they basically just waltzed into the finals. Like the NBA.
They ended strong.
No, but they were a good team. But I just mean
in the
their
regular
route.
Season,
it's like they beat the Bucks without Middleton. They played the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals, and one of the biggest 3. One of the biggest scandals that's never gone mentioned in NBA history. They just took 3 points away from the Heat. I just mean they had pretty much a cakewalk, and as a fraudulent team in the finals.
But they got whooped, so whatever. They
were exposed.
Yeah. But yeah, we don't have to talk about the Celtics necessarily, but I do want to talk about the East a little bit. Did you see Kevin Durant went down last night?
So I talked to our buddy over there. I'm not gonna say any names, but he was saying that it seems hopefully not that bad. Interpret that as you want. I don't know exactly what that means either, but
I mean, yeah.
but I this is an issue with KD. It always has been, and it is remarkable how he came back from an Achilles injury, but he has had other injuries subsequently, and at his age and his physique, this is just going to be something that is going to happen to him.
And it wasn't an age thing. Butler just like dove into his knee at a weird angle. Like that sucked. I think any player, to your point, of his size and his like his weak tall king body, that's gonna hurt anybody.
Yeah. I mean, you saw that play. It's like it would be shocking if he didn't get hurt.
It's a mild MCL. I don't want to do this, but like it's definitely like a ligament thing, and hopefully some players just miss like 20 games. If it was going to happen at any point, like at least it's not the playoffs. So,
yeah. Again, I never thought that he was going to come back from his Achilles injury
or his like foot injury. That was crazy too.
I mean, I just
fracture.
I just did not think he'd come back and be the kind of player he is, and like it's phenomenal that he is this good. It's just insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully he'll be back soon, and yeah, if not. So basically they said, I guess this is recent from ESPN, just a minute or two ago, Kevin Durant has been diagnosed with an isolated MCL sprain of the right knee and will be reevaluated in 2 weeks. There's optimism that he will miss less time than he did with a 6-week absence last season. So sounds like a month.
Which sucks because the Nets were on a run of 18 wins out of 20 games. And they were turning into the team. I mean, we talked about this last week, but their offensive rating in the last 15 games is 121.4. Like, awesome. But the end of last night's game was amazing, right? And you got to see a little bit of chaos. And like, I don't really care about seeding or as long as the Nets get in there. But they're going to be fun without KD. It's going to be cool to see Kyrie and Simmons kind of like adjust accordingly.
Well, right, because when teams make the playoffs and they make a run, a lot of that is dependent on the seedings, because eventually you lose to someone that's better than you. Yeah. But if you get a fortuitous lie, you might be able to go to the Western Conference Finals. Like Portland did that a couple of years ago, and people can look at me like, "Wow, that was a successful season. They went to the Western Conference Finals." Like we heard about this with certain players, like Carmelo Anthony early in his career. Like he took them to the Western Conference Finals. Like, wow, the Western Conference Finals, the Eastern Conference Finals. Right. And then you look and you're like, yeah, but whatever, man. You got to. To me, that just doesn't mean anything. Like it sucks when your team is eliminated in the first round. Like that is unfun. You were denied important games. You're denied seeing your team win. But a lot of it is just like how this math works out, and you got to play this team who is missing somebody, or this team, whatever.
But it works in both ways, right? Because like Chris Paul gets to the Western Conference Finals and the finals, and everyone's like, he's a loser. I'm like, but Jason Tatum can't be, not to mention him, or like another player can't be like on the cusp of greatness when like Chris Paul is there. It's just whatever's the flavor.
Well, I just mean it's totally natural, right? That we look at these like runs, even if they end up not going to the finals. Like, oh, they had a run. They went to the Eastern Conference Finals. Then they ran into someone who was better than them. Yeah. And like a lot of that is just dependent on how the seedings lie out. But to me, it's like you got to beat everybody. Those are like you're getting yourself in position to maybe beat somebody, and like if you're playing weaker opponents, that's obviously a good thing, right? So if there's parity amongst say 5 teams and one of them gets to avoid playing a better team for another round, yes, you have more opportunity to advance. Yeah. There are just less ways for this to go wrong. Right. So I get all that, but at the same time, like you gotta beat the teams who are best. That's how it works, generally speaking.
Sure.
So I just mean for the Nets, right? It's like Oh man, that would have been a cool matchup with them against Boston. In a couple days. I think I think they play Thursday, and that was like going to be like a national game, vying for the supremacy of the Eastern Conference. And without KD, you're like, well, that loses a lot of its luster, obviously.
For sure. Sucks. But I feel bad for the Bucks a little bit because Middleton is crucial to that team, and I feel bad for the Knicks because they'd be the best team in the league if R.J. Barrett didn't cut his finger open. But this is what's frustrating to me about sports games in general. There's nothing we can do. There's no opinion about the Nets now. We just have to wait. We can talk about what they are like without KD, but the whole idea with the Bulls was Lonzo Ball was going to be their point guard. It's well, what are your thoughts on them? Lonzo Ball was supposed to be their point guard. And it's frustrating.
I mean, look, as Ben Simmons fan, maybe this will get him looking for a shot more. I felt like he had turned the corner last month, and he was looking to score. He was pushing in transition. He was going to the rim more. He wasn't putting up big scoring numbers. There's only so many shots that you can take away from KD and Kyrie. Those guys need their shots. They are the best in the league at making those. So Simmons being low volume is not a big deal to me. But last couple games, he just is not taking shots. And this version of him as this Draymond-y guy is just not that interesting.
Yeah, I know.
He's a good passer. He's a good defender. The version of him that I believe in was the one who was putting up 20, 10, and 10 on 65% shooting over these swaths of games where Joel Embiid was out. This guy who goes 2 of 4 from the floor, I'm that's a cool player. I like the things he does, but that's not the version of him that I'm particularly interested in. Yeah. So I'm saying as some silver lining to a KD injury, maybe the fact that they will need other people to step up and take more shots, maybe can get him geared in that direction. I felt like he has regressed after that hamstring injury that cost him a few more games. And I think not only in his field goal attempts going down, but watching some of the games, he's kind of back to early on to seeming to lack confidence in his body when he's around the rim.
I just don't think he's healthy.
That's what I'm saying. I agree, and I'm saying I think he was making progress, and that hamstring injury kind of set him back. So hopefully he can ramp up and because there'll be some urgency for more scoring in KD's absence that he can have some impetus to do that too.
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of want to talk about. I don't want to have a Sixers talk. I want to talk about his old running mate Joel Embiid and the MVP ladder. Why is he out of the top 5? Why is he ever out of the top 5? This dude is having an incredible season.
I mean,
we know, but let's stay away from that.
What could it be?
I know. But maybe all I want to say is the funniest, most entertaining part of this season, which I'm loving. This is a great season. Is this Kia NBA ladder on NBA.com is so funny. And you read this writing, and shout out to this writer because I think he's been given orders, being well, we have a lot of these national games coming up. Let's make heavyweight fights out of this. And this is what I think the G League should do and the WNBA should do. Make main characters out of non-main characters and then pit them against each other and create stories, right? Whatever. Pretentious. But I get what they're doing, but you cannot deny Joel Embiid at this point. He had one of the greatest runs of any modern player last year. He only got all NBA second team. We've talked about this, but that ladder is funny.
Well, I mean, again, we have our reservations about BPM, but just as a thumbnail, Jokic, Doncic, Curry, Embiid. That's 1 through 4. Those are your candidates right now. I mean, and Curry's hurt. Yeah. And then you get a little further down, and you have your guys Jimmy Butler is now 6th. Jimmy Butler is a great, great player who just does not get the appreciation he deserves.
He's awesome.
Then you have, Anthony Davis, who's hurt. You have Giannis, Halliburton, Durant, Donovan Mitchell. That's the group,
Mm-hmm. And then you get Lauri Markkinen and all that stuff.
I mean, and then you have that group of LeBron, Zion, John Morant, Sabonis. You know, like there's great players in that mix. Siakam, Lillard, Harden, Randall, Devin Booker, Paul George. But that Embiid is not mentioned as a top 3 candidate is just absolute nonsensical. Like he is right now either third or fourth. It's him or KD. That's it.
He's absolutely that high. Yeah, the dude is incredible. He's just incredible. We'll talk about that more as the season goes along. I don't want to.
I know he's missed some games.
Yeah.
You know that's definitely true, but he hasn't missed a ton.
No, he qualifies. But I don't want to drag our this train, this freight train heading towards this Atlanta Hawks discussion I wanted to have.
All I wanted to say to your point about Joel though is that he's currently hurt again. So like that
Yep.
him missing a few more games does make those arguments that he hasn't played enough more valid. Mm-hmm. But the guy is averaging 33.5, 9.8 rebounds, 4.6 assists, which is more than any Celtics MVP candidate.
Yeah,
shockingly so. And his scoring efficiency is like 64%. It's like the dude is having another crazy year.
Crazy.
But anyway, you want to talk Hawks?
Yeah, man. What the hell?
You? Like, look, you were banned from the Garden for spitting on Trae Young during a playoff series. I remember when he did that. You hawked a goober, you hit Trae, and you've been banned from the Garden since. Is this you rubbing salt in the wounds? Rubbing spit in the wounds?
Melting the ice tray, man. Like, so you just listed some like great players. Trae Young should be in there somewhere, right? Like going into the season, I'm like, this is Trae's season. He's going to be a top 15 player, I think. He's a gifted passer. He gets buckets. Maybe the worst defender in the NBA who plays a lot, but like is a maestro as a creator. And he's kind of like had a decent season. He had some pass last night. I think it was last night where he was trapped in the corner, like near half court. And he just like chucked a lob up to, I think it was your boy, Frank the Tank. It was just like incredible, man. I mean, he's definitely fun. As like someone going to a game, I'm like, I would like to see Trae Young play for sure. But the Hawks are disappointing. 19-21, 9 games out. Like, there's talk of him being the next superstar on the trading block. Is that weird?
I think that's a little weird. I mean, just because, the guy is 24 years old. And the major issue that he's having this season is, like, he's shooting poorly. Like that's the main thing. He's shooting 31% from 3, and those are,
below his
a third of his shots. And this is a guy who is he was compared to Steph when he came into the league, and that was not true. It was more a stylistic comparison and his height and gifted player, and he would launch very deep threes off the dribble. Mm-hmm. But he was never actually that great of a shooter by percentages. Now, as a guy who always has someone on him, he does not get the chance to take a lot of wide open shots where he's just spotted up. There's a high degree of difficulty to shooting this well. And this is also why Curry is just so unique. That it's not just that he's shooting this high percentage. He's doing it with all this attention on him. Mm-hmm. So like Trae Young not shooting that high of a percentage, I will give him the same benefit of the doubt that I do to like James Harden or Luka. Like a lot of these are self-created. Where it's like, man, we don't have shit going on in this possession. Time for me to just huck up a step back.
Love it. Yeah.
Like difficult shots, but if I can make these even in a 28% clip, that's better than what else we're going to generate right now with 4 seconds left in the shot clock.
Yeah.
Like that's a decent possession in the half court based on nothing. And I feel like those guys are casualties of that kind of math and that kind of necessity for someone on your team to take those shots.
Yeah.
But like there is also a lot of volatility in three-point shooting on a year-to-year basis I think people underrate. So I mean, Trae going from shooting, 38% to 31% looks really stark. Like, wow, what a decline. But this guy also shot 32% his first year, then 36%, then 34, then 38, then 31. Like, this isn't outside the spectrum of like the year-to-year fluctuation of three-point shooting.
Yeah, and you touched on something really quickly that was kind of my thought on this. It's like when they acquire someone like DeJounte Murray, cool. Like, you're adding, in my opinion, a really, really good player defensively that kind of like, in a quick mental thought, like fixes a lot of Trey's weaknesses if someone can have his back on the perimeter, and is a great player offensively too, in my opinion. But what you did was you took away Trae Young's ability to be the heliocentric player on the Hawks. And I think a way to construct a team, not in every situation, but a way to do it would be like to bring in a player he's always going to be attached to is Luka Doncic, right? I don't think the Mavs are trying to not acquire great players, but they know a heliocentric model, even though you kind of put all your eggs in one basket, is a powerful thing for their team, especially when you have a player as talented as these two guys. And I was looking at usage, and usage obviously is as noisy as any stat. Trae Young's usage is kind of down from last year, but 33.7 versus 34.4. That's fine. But when you compare it to someone like Luka, who's at 38.6, you can see kind of the difference in the team point of view in these two players, in maybe actuality. But I think bringing in somebody who eats as much as DeJounte Murray kind of takes the identity away from the Hawks.
I think that is true. But, also in theory, I kind of like the idea that you can have two guys who are, expert playmakers. I think they were both among the top 5 in assists last season per game.
Theory, yeah.
In theory, I like that idea that passing is scalable and that you can funnel all your possessions to those two guys, and basically no one else on that team needs to make decisions with the ball. And so, like, at all times, someone is on the court who is able to be your primary creator. I will also say, to their credit, when they have what I believe is their intended starting lineup on the court, which includes those two guys plus Hunter, Capella, and Collins, which is a nice, well-rounded group.
I like that. I like them.
You've got 3 good defenders in there. Collins isn't bad defensively. You got floor spacing, and you got a lob catcher. They are plus 10, like, according to Cleaning the Glass. So, like, we can look at the Hawks and say there's problems. Maybe, Trae is the next star who's on the move. That could all be true. But I also do think when you kind of look at that team and you say, you know what, let's just hold this down. If we can get everybody healthy, we might surprise some people in the playoffs because we're secretly good.
Yeah, totally. And like, I agree. And I want to backtrack a little bit. Like, when you were like, I like the idea of 2 basketball geniuses on the court. So do I, right? Like, that was the appeal of the Nets. But just like looking at what's happening in that lineup you mentioned is much better. But for the season, just with assist percentage, which is wonky, the Hawks are dead last. They're number 30, I believe, in assist percentage at 55.2. Assist to turnover, they're also dragging in the whole league. I believe they are in the middle. I mean, a lot better, actually. But number 5, interesting. So they don't turn the ball over as much, but they're not like creating these wonderful looks for their teammates as we thought. And like, that maybe having 2 basketball geniuses, and of course it depends on which kind of genius we're talking about.
Which numbers are you looking at? Because I'm just checking here.
All season segments.
Not to
assist percentage.
Not to push back here, call you out, but facts are facts. They currently are second in turnover percentage.
No, assist to turnover is number 5. I'm looking at NBA.com. That might be different.
I'm just saying they do not seem to be
assist to turnover.
Their main issue just seems to be the assists themselves.
That's what I'm talking about. They're last for the season.
But they do take really good care of the ball. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, what I'm talking about is exactly that. So like, something is working, but like, this is a disappointing Hawks team a little bit, and like, That lineup you mentioned is good, but
I mean, look, their offensive rating is 22nd. This is not a team that is scoring well, despite the fact that they have, as we said, talent to be a good team.
and we watch them on League Pass. We see this thing happen where Trae Young and DeJounte Murray kind of trade possessions, and they kind of do the same stuff. And this works sometimes, but it is not like this beautiful flowing offense that I thought we'd see. And it leads me to think, maybe it's Luka bias, it leads me to think that like perhaps Trae Young in a more heliocentric model would produce a more dangerous team.
That could be. My prediction here is that if they get healthy, the Hawks are going to beat someone in the first round.
I mean, they're a good team, right?
I just think that if they are healthy, they are better than people think. Like, they might beat the Bucks if Middleton's not there or something weird.
No. Let's go Pacers. Let's go Heat, Pacers, Bulls, whoever makes it, right? Like, but they're not going to be matched up with them. They're probably going to be matched up with the Celtics, Knicks, or Bucks.
Well, that's what I was saying. I was saying it'll Milwaukee, Cleveland. Like, I don't think they'll beat Boston or Brooklyn, but I think that Milwaukee or Cleveland, if Middleton isn't healthy, because otherwise they're definitely a lot better, could lose to a healthy Hawks team. Again, only if they're healthy. This current version, not a good team.
Yeah.
Their offensive rating is not good. Their defense is mediocre. But healthy, actually, I think the Hawks might be secretly good.
And as a trade deadline is a month away, I think, as of recording this, I don't think the Hawks or the Raptors should do much. I think that those rosters, and I mean, of course, John Collins is in play. If someone wants to take Fred VanVleet, sure. But I think the core ideas of those teams are good. So I don't think trading Trae Young is a great idea. Obviously, it depends on what they get back. But I don't think reinvesting in assets is going to be better than just keeping Trae Young.
So, in theory, right? If you said we're gonna get rid of Trae Young, and we're just gonna get back draft assets. Maybe get a good young player there.
Yeah.
And you say we're gonna build around these other guys, and we're gonna be a less heliocentric team, but that's gonna allow us to put a better defender on the court, and that's what we're gonna lock into. Maybe there's an argument there, right? That could be a good team. You say we'd actually be better without him. Mm-hmm. In theory. But I don't know if that's how they feel, because Trae is a spectacular offensive player. And just because he's having a down year shooting the ball doesn't mean you say we have to blow it up because this guy is just not shooting well. Yeah. He went from 38% from three last year to 31%. Time to cash out.
No.
But maybe organizationally they're not thrilled by him. There was some stuff about Nate McMillan potentially resigning. Mm-hmm. There were some issues with him and Trae. You actually just don't know how ownership feels about somebody.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what you get back. And I think Trae Young would probably get a package similar to Donovan Mitchell. And we're seeing Donovan Mitchell's effect on the Cavaliers. I think the Cavaliers had a better base coat than the Hawks do without Trae. I believe Mobley, Jared Allen, and Darius Garland were formidable to begin with. And then you add Mitchell, and he could just bomb away. We saw this in that crazy performance he had. And whether that be a result of getting to the foul line, scoring inflation, all these things, like, that was a great ad for them, but they mortgaged a lot to get him. And I don't know if there are assets from a team enough to come back for Trae Young.
I also think Trae is a very strange fit for a lot of teams. Mm-hmm. And, because of the fact that he's a defensive liability, because in order to extract his full value, he really needs to dominate the ball. I don't know too many teams where you would say, this guy is the key to what we're doing here. Do you say, all right, swap him for Fred VanVleet and surround him with a bunch of 6'9" defensive switchable guys, and that's how we're going to win a title? I don't know. Do you look at like the Lakers, and you're like, all right, look, we'll give you all of our future assets and expiring contracts, and we're going to put them with like LeBron and AD. Like maybe, right?
They don't have nearly enough.
I agree with that. I just mean,
Yeah.
who are the teams that we would say Trae Young makes sense in this role? Like, do you put him on the Mavs?
No.
You say we're going to put him next to Luka.
I don't like that.
That's what I mean. And also, just by the way, I raised the point that maybe they'd be better off with them. I'm not saying this is true.
No.
This year, when he is off the court and you have like Collins and Murray on, because that's the only combination of starters that actually has played a lot. It's just really those two.
Are they good?
They've sucked.
Okay.
They have the worst offense in the NBA. They are in 413 minutes.
Yeah.
They are -7 with a 100 points per possession, which is in the first percentile. So without Trae, that team can't score.
But yeah, I mean, the assumption is if in a hypothetical world you deal Trae, you get a bunch of starters and assets. Like you get immediately playable players. Ideally, what Utah did when they dealt Mitchell.
But complicating this is that they just gave up all of their assets for DeJounte.
Yep. Well,
So
the Hawks
you can't
the
rebuild.
Hawks gave up their. Well, what if they get more the equivalent assets back? You're just like swapping out point guards, basically.
That's what I mean, right? You're like, okay, we're back where we started, except that we are now building around DeJounte, who isn't as good as Trae Young.
Like I just I've heard the rumor that he might be unhappy, so he might force something. But to your point, like, do you put him on Orlando? Do you ride with? Do you just like keep a core of like Franz and Trae, and kind of deal parts away?
Well, you'd keep Paulo.
You have to keep Paulo, but if you send like Suggs and 1 million draft picks, like would that do it?
I don't know. And also, this is a guy who has, like, this is the first year of his extension. So this is a guy signed through 2027.
And you love
And
that, but like
which is great if you're acquiring him, or makes you totally disinterested in acquiring him.
right. It depends on the situation, right?
However you feel about Trae Young is infinitely like magnified by the fact that you're getting him for 5 years, basically.
Yeah, I mean, what a great player who doesn't really fit in. There's certain players that are great that kind of fit everywhere. And it's not about height. I know you're racist against short kings, but there's short kings that fit everywhere. For example, Chris Paul, whatever. I think Jalen Brunson, notwithstanding his cost, fits on every team. He does what he does. But, he doesn't get the same usage that Trae would demand automatically. I don't know.
I'm saying I think Trae works in Atlanta. I'm saying they're secretly
I think
good.
that's the one.
If they get healthy, that team makes sense to me. You've got DeJounte there to help, deal with the fact that he can't defend. So you have a backcourt defender. Capella can defend. Hunter can defend. Collins, pretty good defender. Block shots, rebounds, space of the court. That team makes sense to me. I think they did a good job.
And
putting it together.
Kanu is also depth at the 5. That is really great.
You got Bogey.
I love Bogey. Yeah, and
I
he looks
like
good.
that team.
So do I. And this is what I thought going into the season. You could say that exact few sentences to me, and I'd be like, oh, they're in the mix, right? They're a couple games over 500. Like 5 games over 500. They are where I thought the Cleveland Cavaliers would kind of be. Maybe not, but like Cavaliers are crushing. But I mean, I thought at least they'd be as good as the Pacers, who are 23-18. Like, what do you do if you're them? Like, the Pacers are in a weird spot, right?
I mean, let's talk them. But the last point I wanted to say just about Atlanta and their struggles is like John Collins just can't shoot anymore either.
Did he fall off a cliff?
Oh, completely. This is a guy who had shot pretty well from 3, and that was part of his appeal. He's shooting 23% from 3.
Oh, he should stop shooting. Yeah.
So when you put a guy he's taking 3 a game and at 23%, and you got Trae out there hucking up 7 at 31%, well, hell yeah, the wheels come off your offense. That is just like far below expectation for 2 guys who are, you're basically 2 of your 3 primary scorers. And
to that, I
DeJounte,
would
we know,
say,
is not a great 3-point shooter, and he's shooting 34%.
Yeah. I think Hunter's decent, right? But like, and Capella's no stretch.
Like slightly below average, I mean, and then you look at, you're like, oh, I see. You guys don't take many threes, and you are 27th in 3-point percentage. Like, oh, well, now I know what happened to your offense. Got it.
And if I was them, I'd be like, hey, guys, like, keep on shooting. Like, maybe you can go on a run or you can figure this out in season. And maybe acquire, like, a shooter like a Seth Curry here and there. It might help quite a bit. But, like, a Bullock, you know, any one of these shooters that the Knicks have had, Alec Burks, whatever.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, because when we talk about someone like Giannis, like, Giannis, stop taking threes.
Yeah.
You can't make these. They're not good shots for you. Like, end of the clock, end of a quarter, absolutely, chuck it up. But going down there, they play off you, and you just taking the three with 20 seconds on the shot clock. Like, you can't do that anymore, dude. Stop. But with someone like Collins, it's interesting because this is a guy who is a 36% shooter for his career, which is, you know, at league average.
Yeah.
You know, he when you go to 2020, he shot 40%. The next year he shot 40%. The next year he shot 36%. Now he's shooting 23%. So you actually have to say, keep shooting.
Yeah.
We know you can make this shot. Yeah. Unless he's like, no, my shoulder is jacked up or something.
Right.
You just have to tell someone who has a history of being a quality shooter, you just got to shoot your way out of this, man.
Yeah. Same with Trae Young. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's an interesting team. If the shots kind of start falling, then they get framed differently, right?
Which is what I'm kind of gambling on with my aggressive pro Hawks prediction.
All right, let's talk about the Pacers.
They're just going to shoot better. All right.
Let's talk about the Pacers.
So Halliburton, where is he on the NBA.com MVP
I don't think he's
ladder?
on there. Yo, Jaylen Brown is number 9. Halliburton is not in the top 10. It's crazy. People hate assists, man.
Well, it's interesting because he is certainly a better MVP candidate than anyone on the Celtics, without question.
Halliburton's a beast, man.
I mean, he's better than anybody on the Celtics. Yeah. Halliburton is extremely good. He might be a top 10 player in the league.
I would say so. I mean, gamblers know. And also, if you just watch him, you're just like, this guy is hilariously good. He's like, he does, this game he's just going to dime. Oh, this game he's going to drop 30. You know, like, he's one of those superstars. I like him. I'm a fan.
I mean, here's the tape. Putting up 20 a game, 10 assists a game, 4 boards, 2 steals, blocks a shot every now and then.
That's good.
Takes incredible care of the ball. 5-to-1 assist to turnover ratio.
Yeah.
Excuse me, 4-to-1, which is
excellent.
Like next level elite. Scoring efficiency currently is at 61%, elite, and he is 40% from 3, 55% from 2, 89% from the line. Like this,
awesome.
This guy is a fucking monster.
Yeah, he is, man. He's better than I thought he'd be, but like quicker. But obviously, a player on the Pacers whose primary value is distribution is not going to catch the eye of like an MVP ladder. But we know, and so they have a good one. I would make, if I was the Pacers, I'd make that Sabonis Halliburton trade 10 out of 10 times. Even though, shout out to Sabonis, I really like him. He's awesome. But like,
that was clearly a cool trade for both teams, and I like that it didn't have to have a winner and a loser. It just made sense. You know,
and
Sacramento had 2 perimeter guys who were both talented in Fox and Halliburton. And you look over at the Pacers and you're like, all right, they had Miles Turner and they had Sabonis. Like, how about you give us one of these tall kings? We'll give you a short king, and now we'll both have a short king and a tall king, like a perfect podcast, for example.
I'm tall in mental stature, and you're tiny in mental stature.
I am a dwarf mentally.
Yeah, you're living in the 50s talking about pennant races. Get out of here. But I want to talk.
They're going to capture the pennant. See.
I want to talk about the Pacers roster a little bit more because,
by all means, like my small man's brain can barely comprehend these thoughts that you're expressing, but like I will try to keep up.
It's so hard to dumb everything down for you, dude. Like,
I'm sorry. Can you rephrase that in words that I can understand?
Can the interns pump more oxygen up there so Ben can wake the hell up? But anyway,
Again, English, please.
Anglais. Miles Turner, Buddy Hield were rumored to go to the Lakers and be rumored to be available at the beginning of the season. People didn't expect the Pacers to be over 500, and Miles Turner contract is running out. People have had a love affair with Buddy Hield as a savior for years. I don't know why, but
Sixers Nation and Lakers Nation has looked to the stars.
even
and
some
begged.
Knicks people, yeah,
And
it's
Knicks
weird.
begged for Buddy Hield to come down from the heavens.
Because of his 3 points made totals. But if you just do a quick glance or just watch a game, bro, like he is as good as a lot of normie shooters who make less money than him. Whatever.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's like, I get it's not your money.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, if your team is willing to go over the luxury cap, hell yeah. But if it comes down to like using assets and using a fifth of your salary cap on Buddy Hield, like I suggest you use it differently. But that said, with him next to an ace passer like Halliburton, someone who creates great looks for him, he has been a very valuable shooter this year. I mean, he's putting up 9 attempts a game, making 43%. Like, this is the
He's a
best
weapon.
possible version of him.
Yeah.
And it's like he's still not a good defender. He still doesn't do much except for Chuck. But, one of the things that I've always knocked him for is, despite being this guy who is just this, chucker who everyone is like, he's a bucket getter. He goes out there, he knocks down threes. He was never efficient, really.
I know. Or
Like league
never
average,
extraordinary.
But
yeah.
now, but this year he's been above average. So
Yeah.
he's having a nice year.
Which is a conundrum for the Pacers, right? Because not only do they have him excelling, like they drafted Chris Duarte, who's kind of had his health issues, but like he was supposed to slot in as this lethal sharpshooter. They spent a
In
draft
some ways,
pick on him.
Duarte is kind of like the second version of Hield, where it's
I
like
know.
Hield is like 45 years old, Duarte is like 37.
After Serge Ibaka came out and talked about our ageist ways, I'm going to accept Halliburton and Obi Toppin for their true age of 57. I don't want to
Like
shade
Duarte
them at all.
coming in as a 65-year-old rookie.
He has that experience and that leadership. I mean, he's been chilling with you watching the White Sox throw the World Series.
Look, it's Chris Duarte. See, show us Joe Jackson.
Oh, my bookie's gonna break my knees. But like, what do the Pacers do? Because they're 23-18, awesome. They're gonna make the playoffs if they stay together. But then Miles Turner walks and probably goes to the Lakers, right? Or you can tell he wants to go to a bigger market. He's got that flair. I've seen his tunnel style. And he's made overtures to the Lakers. He's like, I wouldn't mind that. So like, do you bail on the season because they're not going to win a championship? Do you deal him?
You just kind of have to know the temperature in your own building. If you think that Miles Turner is going to leave, then you have to trade him. He's too good not to get a couple draft picks back for.
Yeah, but he's depreciating every day. The value of him is depreciating every day.
In some ways, because he'll be playing less for that team.
Yep.
But I would presume that any team who trades for him would already have
A deal
some
set in
behind the
place.
scenes, guarantee that he's willing to resign there. Maybe not, like written in stone, but if you're a team who's like, look, we know he's going to LA. We know he's going to go somewhere else. We're just not going to give you anything for him because we know he's a rental. Like,
Right.
you might give up a first round pick and something like that. But if you don't intend on keeping him around long term, someone who will can just outbid you.
Yeah, but that bidding has a really low ceiling, right? Because I don't know why the Lakers would give much up for him unless they start like really making strides and getting a lot better, which they might. Your boy, Glizzy, that Glizzy greatness. But I think the Lakers would be reluctant to give up any one of those two draft picks for a Miles Turner rental when they could just sign him outright in the summer.
True. And if you're, again, and by the same token, if you're a team that does not believe that you could retain him long term, why would you give up, multiple draft
Anything.
assets to have
Yeah.
him there for like the last third of the season and the playoffs. Like, unless you were like really a contender. Like, and I don't even know what team would do that. Like, if you're Brooklyn or something, like,
Right. Curry and a draft pick.
Curry, draft picks, Joe Harris, whatever, make
Right.
the money work, and it's like, this is or maybe you give up Claxton and stuff. If you're like this guy can play with our other dudes, maybe you make that deal and you say this is going to win a title, but you still don't give up that much if you think he's going to leave.
Yeah. Or if, like, God forbid, Brook Lopez goes down with an injury and you're the Bucks being like, oh, every year is a win now. Like, we need Miles Turner for 2 months, right? 3 months.
Exactly. But so the main point here is that unless you want him now and you want to retain him, you're not going to give up as much as the Pacers would probably want back. But also, are the Pacers sure he's going to leave? I don't know. They would know. We don't.
Do the
Maybe
Pacers
he's-
want to sign him?
Again, these are all good questions because to me, the combination of him and Halliburton is really good.
For sure.
I think that's a great pairing. And right, you look around the league. You're the Pacers. You have Halliburton. You don't have another star. You got some promising guys. You got some young dudes. I think Mathurin looks pretty good, but I don't think he is like a potential star necessarily. I think he looks like a solid player. Generally, overall, he's not that good.
Yeah.
He's a rookie.
Yeah,
He's
it's
20
hard
years
to
old.
tell
He's got upside.
scoring rookies.
He can score, but he isn't really that great.
I'm more into him maybe, but I see your point. He's part of the scoring inflation nation, but also he gets buckets, and that's not a bad thing. If he's like a light version of Donovan Mitchell, that is good enough.
Yeah. I mean, my thing is, rookies can get better. I'm not saying this guy couldn't emerge and become an all-star. I'm just saying at the lay of the land, you look at him, you're like, he can be a useful NBA player. He could be a starter for us. Is this guy going to go on and be like an all-star? Probably not.
But how do you rate someone like Jaden Ivey, who is having a horrible season, but he's good? You just have to let him get older. And in 2 years, if Jaden Ivey is still like this, bad on me, but I think he's going to be awesome.
Very true. I guess my question here is like, if you're the Pacers and you say, Mathurin, we think he can become not only a quality starter but maybe a star in this league. If you believe in that,
Maybe.
you can say, okay, we're going to let Miles Turner walk, or we'll trade him and we'll get back a couple draft assets, and we'll just kind of like let this play out. But you also would be acknowledging that you are then going to be bad next year. Like, not replacing Miles Turner with commensurate talent and instead getting draft picks. Indiana's not going to sign great free agents. They just don't have that option. And if you say, well, next year we're going to come back with, Mathurin, Hield, and Halliburton, and expect that we will be pretty bad, now you're kind of wasting a year of Halliburton. Like, he's too good to be fucking around with.
And he's
like,
22, but
he's young and you have a window. But I'm like, if you have Halliburton, you kind of have to be looking towards winning with him. He is too good to say we're gonna actually just rebuild this whole thing in a small market. I think.
I agree with that concept, and but let's say Turner's like, yo, if you max me, I will stay in Indiana, because I don't think I'm getting a max contract anywhere else. But if you guys are willing to do it, I'll stay. We are seeing Halliburton and Turner peaking right now. I think Halliburton probably not get much better than this. He's a top 10 player.
I don't know, man. He's 20. He's 22.
Okay. Let's say he's a top
I think
one
he's got
player.
some upside. And
Let's say he's the best player in the league.
And Turner is now just hitting his prime. Like, Turner's been great this year too.
But what do you want Turner to do in his prime? Like, he's not going to turn into Shaquille O'Neal. Like, he is a certain type of player that probably caps out at kind of what he is, which is amazing. And we're seeing, okay, let's say Halliburton gets better. He becomes the best player in the NBA. They're still not winning a championship with this team.
Yeah, I think that's true too. Like
Like,
it's
you have to do something else.
It's a grim specter to look at this team and say, oh, they're a fun surprise story. And Halliburton is a young star. He's emerging as a incredible player, and they're kind of painted
Stuck.
into a corner.
Yeah,
in some
they
ways, where it's like, okay, we let Turner leave, then we only really have one good player. If we bring him back, we're paying, market value for a star for a guy who is a very good player, but like that's other than our core, because Halliburton's about to get real money. This is his I believe this is
Year
his
number
third
2.
season, so he will have one more year before he's making $35 million a year. And you're saying, is Turner and Halliburton good enough for us to win a title? And my thing, I would say, we just have to believe in Halliburton.
Yeah, and then there's moves to be made after that. Right?
We believe he can be a top 5 player. We got to bring back Turner. We got to keep those two together. And then, as you said, we just have to make moves and smart things around the edges.
Hope for the Mathurin pick to kind of bear fruit, right? Hopefully Duarte turns into exactly what they wanted him to be, and you can still mess around with Buddy Hield and maybe get some value for him. But like, I think hitting on a draft pick that late in the lottery, like Halliburton, was your lottery ticket. No pun intended.
I mean, they didn't even do it. That was the Kings.
Exactly. Right. But getting that right, Jesus. Right. But like, it's tough, man. We always talk about purgatory, and this is certainly a better purgatory to be in than like a New York or Washington. But like, this is an interesting situation where there is now necessary skill for the front office to have in deciding what to do as soon as this month, which is crazy.
Well, the thing is, if you pay Miles Turner what he's going to want and what he's going to deserve,
The max.
pay him max, right? So that's you're more or less at the cap then next year.
Yep.
And that's without Halliburton making more than $6 million. You're then a year away from Halliburton and him together making 70.
Yeah.
And like that's fine. Like you can afford that. But next year you look at this roster and you're like, all right, you can shave a lot of money off of it by not bringing back Duarte or Nesmith or Isaiah Jackson. You can get rid of those guys.
Smith.
You could trade Hield if you wanted to for an expiring. You could get him out of there. But like you got Daniel Theis for $9 million next year, TJ McConnell for like a $9 million next year.
These are all dealable players, though.
They're dealable, and I think they're both useful. I just look at it and I'm like, I think you just have to bring back Turner if he'll stay. If he's going to leave, then that's a different conversation.
It is not the worst situation because I even think a Max Turner is tradable, and I really like Andrew Nemhard. He's making nothing, $2 million a year for the next 3 years. Mathern's making, he was a high pick, so he's making 7, 9, and 12. You just have to ride. You have to believe in your roster, right? Like that's a better option than trying to find more Matherins in the draft.
Yeah, and to me, it's like, if you slough off some of those guys who make $9 million, pause.
Process King, TJ McConnell.
You get those guys off the roster.
Yeah,
and it's like, all right, we're gonna really be paying 2 guys. Then you do have some wiggle room if you got rid of Hield.
Hield is making $19 million next year.
Yeah, I mean that's why if you just got rid of him and took out an expiring, you could go and sign somebody.
But he isn't expiring. Oh, you mean this year, like right this month?
Yeah. I mean, if you traded him and you said we want to sign somebody before Halliburton gets his money, and even before Turner actually gets his money, like he'll have his cap hold. But if you said, all right, Turner, we're gonna max you out, but just give us a week. And we're gonna use the money we have here and go out there and like throw a big contract at someone that we think would be really helpful. Like you're Indiana, you're not gonna go and get a superstar, but like, I mean, what if you went out and said James Harden? I'm not saying that's a good fit there, but like, if you said to somebody who may be a little bummed about their current situation, like, hey, dude, we believe in you. We want you to come play with Halliburton. Harden, that's a weird mix. I know.
Yep.
But you might be able to make a case and say, yeah, you're going to go play with the assist leader. You're a bucket. Come play with us. We're going to bring back Turner. You're going to be our 3, and we think we can make noise. It's not a terrible suggestion.
You know what's funny? Like, this is a non sequitur, but like, I always think about markets that can't, like, we just assume no free agent will go to Indiana, right? Like, probably not like a high level dude. But like, I'm always like, and I'm a visual guy. I work in that field. I'm like, if they just like rebranded to something really fun and their jerseys looked amazing, like, you guys would give yourself a chance. Like, it's a stagnant brand, and I just feel like, while you were talking about like, hey, you're a bucket getter, you want to go play with the best passer in the NBA? I'm like, yes. It's like, it's Indiana. I'm like, okay. It's like, it's the Pacers. Like, no, thank you. I'm out on that whole thing. It's like, you need to hit on a few things, and the Pacers as a brand doesn't quite do it.
Because, right, it's like, what if they say, Jeremy Grant will pay you $25 million for 4?
Yeah.
I don't know. Just in Portland, he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't want to be in Portland. I don't know. I mean,
totally, whatever. Just throw it out there. Yeah.
Do the Bulls want to pay Vooch what he's going to get?
Right.
Maybe not. Vooch and Turner together. Like, I'm not saying that's ideal, but like, what about Porzingis?
Shout out to Porzingis.
That's kind of spicy. Two 7-foot shot blockers who both shoot threes. Like,
and
maybe that's cool. Like
stretch.
that isn't what I would necessarily do. But to me, Jeremy Grant would be a nice pickup for them.
What's his contract look like?
He's making 20, and he's off the books after this year.
He's playing really well, but he's happy. That's an example of him already doing that this year. I think it wasn't the right fit in Detroit, and now he just like kind of eats in Portland in a different way, and like his brand has been elevated this season for sure.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying he wants to go there. I just mean, if you're looking at the Pacers, you could go out there and be like, hey, we're going to try to sign like Dylan Brooks. We're going to try to sign a dog. We're gonna put
a new metal
like
dog.
Christian Wood. We want to add like a stretch shot blocking 4, put him next to Turner, space the court, swat a lot of shots at the rim, play kind of a modified version of what the Bucks do defensively, and Halliburton runs the show on offense. I don't know. I just feel like if you can keep Turner and add one other piece, you're kind of cooking with gas, and you'll go as far as Halliburton goes. If Halliburton is a top 5 team, or excuse me, a top 5 player, you are going to be a really good team.
Yeah,
like you just will be.
You made a tantalizing point by mentioning Porzingis, who is like, I'm so happy for him. He's an awesome basketball player. He makes a player option for 36 next year, and then he might float around as like this secret weapon for a few years in the NBA, just like globbing onto different teams on 2-year contracts for like below his actual worth because of his injury risk.
How old is he now? Like 27?
Yeah. Porzingis age. I mean, 27. He's awesome.
These guys are so young.
So young, but the way they play, as soon as they hit like 31, we're not talking about like Vinny Johnson playing until he's like Buddy Hield's age, but like I do think someone like Porzingis is not gonna have like a super long career.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know who has had a super long and great career?
This pod for the last 2+ hours.
This pod, 2 hours and 10 minutes of fury. Cookies.
I love cookies.